It's a beautiful evening, and I just captured some video of a bird that was just as curious about me as I was about him.
Hey, bud. Come on, bud. Come on. Come on, buddy. Come here, bud. Come on, bud. Come on, sweetie. Come on, sweetie. Hi, sweet. Hey, you sweet. Hey. What's up? How's it going? How's it going, bud?
And I remember when I got here a month ago, he was particularly friendly that day too. Also, I met a lizard this morning that I thought was dead, but I think he just stayed out past his bedtime and got too cold to move.
Lizard stays out past his bedtime.
I'm not sure, but I'm sort of learning the language of nature around here. And I've been having lots of insights lately, but I haven't had a chance to talk to myself about them. And I'm not necessarily feeling like it right now, but perhaps I will try anyways. I was seeing creativity as communication, or communication as a creative act. And I was thinking about the efficiency of thought, or how we try to project our partialities onto people and situations and things in order to evaluate and measure if they suit our desires. And that process is always going on. And I realized that it's not really that efficient, it's actually inefficient. To be in a state of mind where the brain is always learning is actually more efficient. Not learning and seeking according to a particular pattern or path, but just learning. And I was realizing that because I was doing something, but I had to walk between two places 3 times, and it wasn't really that efficient, but each time I made that trip I learned something else. So even though it was seemingly inefficient in terms of the goal I was trying to achieve of a certain task, it actually had learning aspects that I wouldn't have seen had that not happened. And I just sort of thought of that in terms of how we plan out everything so efficiently and how it actually is inefficient. So moving according to the patterns of thought, which is programming and efficiency, is not moving according to life. And life, which is not a pattern, is actually more efficient. but it's an efficiency and an order that thought can't recognize and doesn't see as valuable. And thought tries to write over life. And I was thinking about this epigesturetic thing and how the other day I said to someone that I liked their shoes. It was just a random stranger. And then they said, "Oh, thank you." And so their response is sort of recorded in their body and in the fact that they smiled and said thank you, and recorded in mine in that they responded in that way, and in that I gave that appreciative compliment. And I feel like that actually is recorded in the universe. It's in the fabric of the universe. Maybe just because it's in the fabric of the bodies that participated in that transaction. And that's something that can't really be measured exactly, but it's something that really matters. So I was thinking about how even though in society we have all these measures of success and things, the universe, the quantum computer of the universe, is measuring those other things that matter, those things that we can mirror to each other, that are actually encoded in our neurophysiology. It's being recorded in our neurophysiology because we can recognize it. So what is it that we want to mirror and record and recognize? Because what we're recognizing is what we're measuring. And I feel like it also knows the incongruence between what we're saying and what we're thinking. And I noticed somebody who had cramps and they were hunched over in pain. And I was thinking about how psychological pain is what gives us tension in our body as well, to make us slightly deviate from our natural trajectory center of gravity. And that is also stored in the matter of our body because gravity has a different pull on our body when we're out of alignment. I was thinking about how when we learn a new word, then all of a sudden we hear it everywhere. Well, when we see a new world, that world of map consciousness, then we see that world everywhere. So if we get a glimpse of that world and that energy and that language and that being and that consciousness, then we start to see it everywhere. And then one can get led into map consciousness. But it's difficult to remain there because that's not the dominant energy. And we go to the edge of that and then we're scared back. It's like a flux. It's like a wave. It's like the tide coming in. Our brains are experiencing the energy of this wave, of this tide. And I read this paper and I haven't looked at it fully, but I have to read it again. And it was talking about something about 30 milliseconds. And I think that's almost the shutter speed of consciousness. And I feel like in life we go about life sort of liking and disliking things, just like on Facebook. And it's a very superficial algorithm. It's very superficial evaluation of things to just be like, well, I like this and I don't like that based on past. And we're only seeing our past patterns projected on the present and evaluating the present based on that. So it's not even what's happening presently. It's like the 0 or 1. It's very binary. Whereas with the quantum algorithm, the brain is in a state of receiving many different impressions, the whole quantum of information, and seeing the possibility and collapsing the wave function around the possibility. And that's what happens in map consciousness, is that we see the possible world and how beautiful it is, and the potential world. And by seeing it, by observing it, we collapse that into reality more so. So we're almost explorers of that and mapping that territory. And we'd love to be able to come back and say, hey, this is what I saw, this is where I've been in consciousness, energetically, having one's perception changed and shifted in order to see that as an actuality right here, right now, that anyone can see if they shift their perspective. But instead, something else happens when we come back. And I feel we need to hold the superposition state in our brain, not knowing, not evaluating. And in a way, that's what happens when we get confused. It's that we're holding multiple possibilities at once. And when we don't choose based on like and dislike, we become the quantum. The quantum selects and learns, not this accumulation called the personal self. And quantum perception is non-personal because the personal is the ego, which is yes, no. So when it's not just yes, no, binary, good, bad, like, dislike, based on one's own personal recorded images, then it's quantum perception. And I feel the brain is trapped in image making, shuffling, reorganizing, accumulation, knowledge, and not response, communication, creativity. The mind operates on infinite possibility, whereas thought operates on yes or no, approach, avoidance. And through the mental health system, new perceptions are converted and explained in terms of that program. It's explaining away possibility and potential. We live in our own virtual reality map of thoughts and images and sounds overlapped with actuality. And in map consciousness, we're mapping actuality. It's a living reality where anything is possible because we could meet somebody that makes something very possible for us that we didn't know was possible. But if we meet somebody and that's the person that can make something possible, but we meet them with our old thought structures, we might discount them over some trivial detail, yet they were the person that was potentially going to facilitate something unfolding between the two people. I feel like choiceless awareness is letting perception play on the senses, like a musical instrument. Our senses are like notes. I feel like problems are virtual reality because our brain has been trained to see problems. So seeing has problems superimposed and interwoven in it. So anything we see, we usually see a problem or a desire, which is a problem because we want something, so it becomes a problem because we don't have it. But this problem making is programmed into us, so it's always from the past. Seeing isn't a problem, but seeing has been made into seeing problems. If we can see clearly, there is no problem because we can respond adequately, so there's no need to see it as a problem. It's only a problem if we're seeing something that's not really there and then trying to solve it. Or meeting life according to programming. Thought is a serious and persistent mental illness. It wants to continue and then we're out of sync with the actual. We don't harmonize, we have harm in eyes, we have harm in our eyes. The light coming out of our eyes divides us from what's actually happening now. I was pondering the term thought process. And so much of life is devoted to our thinking and our thought process. And I was wondering, what other process is there? And really, there's so many other processes, the most fundamental being the process of life. But when we overlay our thoughts on life, we translate life according to our thoughts. That which arises is not a problem. Don't make a problem out of that which arises. Just see it, and then when we see it not as a problem, then we can see anything beyond problems. And when we see thought as a process, we see we are not that process, and then we're outside of the process. We are not the thought process. We're a human being being processed by thought. We can be thought processors or quantum processors. I feel like being choiceless and afraid is psychosis. To be able to maintain map consciousness, one really has to have no fear and love and compassion. And love is choiceless awareness. Life is fluidity. Life is the fluidity that allows movement. It's not just the structure. That lizard I accidentally killed is dried up, and it's the same structure, but it doesn't have that fluidity, which is life, which is movement, which is communication, which is creativity, which is love, which is perception, which is action, which is freedom and intelligence. And we think thought is the fluidity that allows movement, but that rigidity, that programming, that sound actually probably is that 30 millisecond thing, that vibration that is actually stopping the fluidity of life. And I feel like thought is a type of gravity. It creates a center of gravity, and we gravitate towards that which we think about, or it gravitates us, or it creates a separate me. This sound is this vortex of gravity that creates this separate me, because we're not in our fluidity. We're rigid, and we're moved out of our center of gravity by this sound. Sound has something to do with gravity.